Good evening and welcome to the August 18th, 2020 board meeting for the Fairport Central School District. I'd like to just notify that we have the four exits here in case there's an emergency. Two in front of me, two behind me, and that's for the people in the room, the people at home. It's a good idea now and again to actually plan some type of an evacuation from your home in the event that you do have a fire in your home. I've learned that from our fire departments that it's a very wise thing to do, so thank you. I'd like to, my name is Tim Sliz, I'm the Vice President. Our President of the Board, Peter Forsgren, is speaking to us. He's live or remote tonight, so I will be running the meeting on his behalf. The first item is Fairport High School received a recognition, and I'd like to read that to everyone here. It was dated on, when did we receive this, Brett? Last week. Fairport High School named Recognition School by the New York State. Fairport High School has been designated as a recognition school by this New York State Education Department for the 2019-2020 school year. Under New York's Every Student Succeeds Act plan, recognition schools are those that have high academic achievement, student growth, and graduation rate, and have made progress during the 2018-2019 school year. As of 2019-20 recognition school, FHS received a certificate of recognition from NYSED, New York State Ed Department, Interim Commissioner Sharon Tahoe. Fairport High School is one of 212 high schools to achieve this designation. In total, 582 schools were honored. This year's designees represent 13% of New York State public schools. And there's a quote that Mr. Provenzano had included, and I'll let him speak because he's here.
Yeah, I definitely won't read the quote verbatim, but it speaks to how proud we are of our leadership, our staff, and of course, our students. It's emblematic of their commitment to excellence and trying to be the best they could be for our children. And of course, our comprehensive programming that is enabled throughout the school district gives students an opportunity to experience success, all different types of success as defined by the board's core beliefs. So congratulations to the FHS team and of course our students who make us proud.
Great, thank you. Please note that we are all masked here in 512 at Fairport High School, and we are at least 7 feet apart. We all have microphones, so we all will be able to be heard. So you'll be seeing the camera scanning periodically as different board members and different administrators are speaking, so we hope it doesn't make you dizzy, because sometimes that happens. All right, I'd like to go on to our agenda approval. I'd like a motion to approve tonight's agenda, please. Damon, second by Marty. Any discussion? I'd like to ask that we change flip-flop number 6, which is presentations, with number 5, board discussion action items, so that our presenters here will not have to sit through so much of our meeting. Anybody just like to discuss that change? Everyone okay with that change? In that case, I'd like to ask a motion to approve the amended agenda, thank you. Damon, second. Marty, all in favor? Great,
Aye.
That's 6-7-0. Thank you. Communications, our president's report. Mr. Forsgren, is there something you'd like to present? Or would you like me to present, or?
I have a few things I'd like to
Great.
share, if that's okay. Knowing that I'm remote, and I appreciate that. I suppose I have a choice, but I would be breaking the guidelines if I were there in person, having traveled to states with high spread of coronavirus. But a great vacation. I think I can say without exaggeration, right, that during this summer, we've had more meetings than we've ever had, at least in my experience. I don't know if anybody wants to refute that who's been on the board longer than I have. It just seems like we haven't nearly had as many meetings. And there's reasons for it, obviously. So to our newest board members, Erica and Tim, just your second year, wow, way to start, right? Coming in at a time that's really, really busy. Typically, that hasn't been the case necessarily during the summer. But all these meetings, we have noted over many times, sometimes privately, other times a little bit more publicly, that the situation we're now in does not really allow for much of a win-win mentality. And that's unfortunate. I think we're made up of a group of people who like to seek that out. Many people have thanked us. They thanked the administration. They thanked the staff for the large lift that is being made, and they have recognized that we will not be able to please everyone. perhaps no one perfectly. And in doing all this, many have pointed out that they themselves are not entirely happy with the solution, and then they go on to make suggestions for improvements, obviously, which would help them be a little bit more happier and perhaps other people a little less so. So it's been a challenging time with all those meetings. Trying to be careful in what I say and perhaps the words I use, and likely to fail a little bit because I do not wish to offend, I do want to point out the value of the efforts that have gone on, and do so in referencing an opinion columnist published just this week in the New York Times. Most of you probably know the author, David Brooks. He started with this sentence in this. He says, "Radicals are not my cup of tea, but I'm grateful for them." Now, the word radical is likely it has negative connotation, which is why I want to be careful, and I will try not to use that word. But our community, both the broader parenting community, but also our staff and different segments has been brought up where we needed to seek insight, counsel, understand feelings. I think that whole community and the different areas where people may reside have had and been afforded multiple opportunities over time to express ideas and ask questions. And I'm grateful that we have a district and leadership and our superintendent and his staff that constantly want to understand and know the opinions of other people so they can influence our decisions. I know as a board that's definitely the case. We want that information. And we've seen that advocate, we've seen people advocate from many different areas from across the spectrum, from one end to the other. And so I do not wish to label any of those who may be on one end or the other as a radical. But as David Brooks wrote, what he wrote and did so much better than I'm perhaps doing is something I have felt over the years and expressed to many people over the years. The gratitude I have for those who do advocate from one side of the spectrum or the other in terms of helping us as a society to best understand the challenges that we face, the problems that need to be solved. Over the years and the decades in the history of this country, those who have advocated from those positions at the ends have helped bring to our awareness the challenges. And in this situation, it's not necessarily indifferent, it's definitely unique, and people have had strong opinions. And bringing those forth have been good part of the effort so that we can see in ways we may not be able to see and understand from people's perspectives in ways that we perhaps are able to understand because of our own internal biases. So I am grateful, though, in all of that, saying all that, I'm grateful we're a group of 7, and then with Brett and his staff and others, that group gets bigger. But that by having a group of 7, we can take all those different thoughts and advocacy that has been shared over the last couple weeks and months, and try to moderate it into the right solution. And indeed, in this situation, it may not be win-win. Indeed, there's probably perhaps nobody who's perfectly happy with it, but we can't entirely be happy with the situation we've been dealt. The reality is we have been dealt it. And we've come up with the best way we think we can move forward. There's no doubt we're going to have to continue to monitor this as a board and to continue to ask questions, to look at data, to understand what's going on around us. We understand the state will be doing the same thing, and indeed they may impose their will based on what they see from a regional perspective, from a state perspective, whatever it may be. It's a fast and challenging time. It's going to continue to stay fast and challenging, I imagine, in terms of as we continue to learn more. I've said it, I think before, right? The number of studies that are out there are impressive as we try to understand what is the coronavirus, long-term, short-term impacts, etc. So it's not over. We will have to evaluate the effectiveness of everything that's been done, the decisions that have been made, and we will do that as we go forward. And in some ways, continue to, I suppose, moderate and bring those solutions, which as a whole will benefit us in the greatest way possible. So I'm not sure as much of a president's report. I do think, though, that effort has been monumental, that it has been quite the task, quite a lift, one in which indeed leaves people feeling not entirely satisfied. And that's okay. We will continue that way. It's okay for us to be uncomfortable as we move forward and look at what we need to do. But thank you to my fellow board members. It's amazing in 2 weeks vacation how lost one can feel as quickly as in as many meetings as we have in a short 2-week time period. I appreciate the stepping up and everybody striving to participate as much as possible. So that's all I had to say. Welcome for others if they want to join in. Otherwise, Tim, ready to move on to the next part of the agenda.
Great. Thank you, Peter. Anybody? Okay, Superintendent's report. Brett? Not that there's anything to report.
Soul through I was in this room this morning and speaking with a bunch of our newest staff members during orientation, and we were talking about our compelling why. Why do we do what we do? What gets us up in the morning? What makes us go to all these meetings? What makes us, want to continue to serve, and even in the most unusual circumstances? And I'm proud to say that the people that we've hired, have strong wills and desires to contribute to the board's vision and mission. And we spent a lot of time talking about that vision and mission, and it's one of the reasons that enables me to lead and be passionate about serving under all types of circumstances. And I'm proud to be a part of all the different types of advocacy, the reopening plans, the uncertainty, the compelling why, and that's to serve the vision and mission in our vision of excellence. So I appreciate the board's clarity around that and high expectations. I appreciate our district administration. They have rallied, they have answered the bell, and our staff continues to come along in this process and inform it to make it their own. So when our students come to school, whether it's virtually or remotely or the hybrid, we will be able to provide the very best for them. It's not perfect, still a lot of work to do, and I think Mr. Forsgren said it perfectly, that we're not always making everyone happy, but we're just trying to be informed. And that's sort of where I'm starting with right here is, I don't want to get too deep into this, and I know that we've seen this so much, but I'm really proud of the fact that these have been the guiding principles, and these guiding principles started to form in late April, and we've been tried and true to these principles. We're making recommendations not based upon what I think or what the board thinks. We're using best practices. We're using our medical experts that we've connected to. We've talked to many different medical experts. We have them as part of our reopening planning committees that we've had, and I'm really proud of how we've stayed tried and true to that. We're continually seeking feedback. You mentioned that, Peter, but I'll put a number to that in a little bit. But we know that as we talk about onboarding our students and our staff, these are the three areas. They haven't wavered. The social emotional needs of our students and staff, the academic needs, curriculum management, educational programming, and everything's associated with that. And there's lots of operations and logistics doing things that we've never done before. And I think that doing that in a way that's consistent and can be applied through all of our buildings, so one building doesn't look different than the other, that's been one of our opportunities here, and we're staying tried and true to that. We still have much to do, but we will continue to monitor and adjust, which is the fifth pillar, if you will, as we move through this process. So these were speaking to me early on, and they're still speaking to me. I won't go through all these meetings, but we've had 15 different interactions that I've actually been able to document, right? With Facebook Live, YouTube Live, multiple iterations or interactions with our staff as well, from whole group meetings to individual staff or department meetings. So really taking this idea of feedback and informing our process, we took it to a whole new level. We found a new way to communicate and outreach to the community. We will continue to do that. We will continue to learn from our community. They've informed our plans. And I know that's something that the board really craves admirably, that we want to know what the community's thinking. And I think through our thought exchanges, through our Google surveys, through our town meetings, we really have learned a lot. And there it is, just in a nutshell. And we've broken this down into phases. And we're into phase 2. It's going a little bit longer than I anticipated, but that's also to be expected. Teachers are grappling with the many different components of it. We're still ironing out details with special education. But day by day, week by week, we're making the right kind of progress. We're looking at onboarding our staff using September 2nd, 3rd, 8th, and 9th, as per the recommended calendar changes, as an opportunity to put forth a professional development program that takes the 5 fundamentals, or the social emotional components, the logistical components, and educational components, and put them in a program so everybody is receiving the same opportunity. So our students are well received on that very first day on September 10th. We've met our deadlines of communicating with families to date as well. And tonight, you'll see a calendar adjustment that I'll make a recommendation. It is on the agenda. But just moving through the phases, there's been a process, and we're holding true to it. And if it wasn't for our incredible administrative team of sticking to that process and adding a lot of meaningful operational pieces and leadership around that, it wouldn't come to fruition. So much appreciation goes out to our leaders. That includes our administrators, our lead teachers, and our teacher leaders and our unions. Thank you. Different kind of world if I was looking into my crystal ball, right? Who would have thought that we'd be looking at this? We wouldn't even know what this means. It's a whole new way of life. And I think that we're poised to bring it to life in Fairport schools, do it in a manageable and meaningful way. But in the midst of all this very important information, it is important, and it's gotten the majority of the attention this summer, I do not want to lose sight of this. This is our real work, and I know this is something that the board is passionate about. The board has expectations to refine this and go even further. We've talked about that at our retreat. And I was really proud of the fact today when I was talking with our newest members, just looking at how many times access, equity, and diversity are put forth in our district goals, our vision statements, and our mission statements. And now we want to, again, take it a step further and add accountability measures. In the accountability measures, you know, we've been talking about them, but we're using data to inform where resources go. We're looking at our code of conduct. We're looking at using data to see how we're doing in the following categories listed here: discipline, course and extracurricular enrollment, interscholastic sports, the performing arts, and recruiting and hiring practices. These are all priorities that have evolved through our diversity council, our lead by example group, and our equity audit, and through this recent closure when we had racial unrest and we had community meetings with our diversity council and we were talking to our students. These were the themes that kept coming forward. Creating a culturally responsive curriculum. I am looking forward to have interactions with Ellen Reed, Kelly Weishar, and our teachers on this very imperative. The curriculum is one place where all students receive a guaranteed opportunity to learn, reflect, and be globally aware in this diverse society that we live in. We will be able to bring the vision to reality through a comprehensive curriculum, and we'll be able to talk about that throughout the year. We really need to be intentional about our organizational culture. We need to look at who's included, who's ignored, and who's sort of just left there to linger. And again, you'll see hiring and recruiting practices, building capacity through professional learning, and bolstering our efforts to involve community members, to listen to their voices, and to continue to hear their stories. And I know somewhere in there is a district goal, right? So I know that we've been talking about that, and I know that we're committed to putting that forward as well, as along with another piece on instructional technology. So, I just thought that the next piece of this, we can't lose the whole child. And through our district administrative retreat, you know that we've been focusing on safe and engaged for the last 2 years. But this year, it came to the forefront that out of the whole child tenets, healthy and supported are going to be our focus areas. They'll be seen through district-wide themes, our APPR or our coaching opportunities with staff, our professional development, and I think we'll be talking a lot about health and safety this year as well, and how we can support our students and meet them where they are. Still part of the healthy or whole child tenets. We're still looking at safe and engaged, but we're really going to see a narrow focus on these two whole child tenets. I appreciate all that the board does, working when nobody else is thinking about school and thinking about school in ways that nobody thinks about school from the lens of the whole child and every child. I'm honored to be a part of this journey, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to do so.
As I've stated many times, Brett, I was actually took an hour and sat in the backyard and read, and as I'm looking up at the sky, the clouds were just cruising by, and I thought, well, that's how things are right now, just constantly moving, and you never know when it's going to change. You watch those clouds change up there, and that's exactly the climate we're in right now, and that's how we're trying to navigate.
And you're right, that's what we need to do, and I think that's what the community expects us to do. But I also know that the board has bigger visions and expectations about how we need to move forward, and that's why I thought it was important that I really highlighted these, especially as we're talking about district goals, to prompt some further conversations, and I know that we'll be talking about that in the future. But at the end of the day, we'll be moving through COVID, and we'll need to make sure that these pieces continually evolve.
And it's great.
Brett or Tim, I'm just going to offer a couple of comments if I could. I know
you
the
on?
board comments are later on. The mic is on, but. So I just think that we have to be pragmatic and recognize that in spite of all the great work that's happened by everybody, and everybody in this room and everybody not in the room, that we realized that I spent countless hours preparing this summer for something that we're not trained for. We've never been through this before. We didn't learn about it in school. This is different for everybody, and we're going to come back day one, and it's going to be very uncomfortable. And I think that we just really need to recognize that this is not going to be perfect, right? And it could be perfect, but I expect there to be a lot of challenges, right? There's a lot of technology and a lot of PPE and just a lot of logistics that are going to be stretching people in areas that we never thought we'd be stretching. And I just think we need to recognize that and be thankful for it, but ask for people to be patient and realistic, right? Don't expect things to come back and be perfect and everything to flow perfectly day one. This is something that we need to adapt to and get used to and communicate and be patient with each other and respectful of each other. But don't stop talking and sharing information, because things are happening in each building that we can't anticipate, and they'll happen as they happen, and then as we communicate, we'll adjust to it. I think as a board or as a district and as staff and admin, we'll work together. But I think that I don't want to give anybody the impression that we expect that things are going to go back and work without a hitch. It's just going to be, it's going to be what it is, right?
And the questions, they're endless, and they're the right questions, and they're the right feelings and thoughts behind them. And I think you hit it right on the head. There needs to be this level of patience, and I continually bring up this idea of, displaying, exemplifying a measured grace, and constantly, being willing to listen and learn and lean on each other. You've heard me say that, and that's where we do best, is when we try to serve each other around our high expectations to be the best for our children and our families.
Great, thank you. Number 3 on our agenda is the consent calendar, where we will approve the minutes of the regular board meeting back in July, and also our earlier workshop earlier this month. Do I have a motion to accept the consent calendar? Judy, second. Marty, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I'm going to ask, just because we're so spread out, if you could verbalize, I don't want to miss anybody. Number 4, personnel actions. Instructional, I need a motion to accept the instructional actions that were presented to us. Marty, second. Joyce, any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
That passes. Letter B, summer curriculum writing. I need a motion to accept. Yes. Yes. The instructional? Okay.
Little thing on. So there were lots of substitute teacher resignations and one substitute teacher hire. So that discrepancy was enormous.
Mr. Aloff, if you'd like to answer that?
Yep, great question. So the longer list of resignations is not representative of like a new batch of folks by any means. We have been working on cleaning up our available substitutes since I started July 1 last year. There's a number of people on this list that have been on our sub list, but they have not actually subbed for us ever or in a long, long time. So basically we are cleaning up and making sure that those that are on our list are folks that are actually coming in and working for us. So these folks haven't been working for us, and we're just cleaning things up. We have a number of subs in the hopper that you'll see on the next agenda. So the one that's on there tonight will not be alone. There'll be a lot more coming.
Phew. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
No
And
problem.
in that same vein, I don't mean to just to add to that, we may be looking to do a special session to approve those before the school year starts.
Great. All right, thank you. Now back to 4B, summer curriculum writing. A motion to accept the report that was presented to us. Judy, second on that? Joyce, any discussion about this? Report that was submitted, plus the approval of those individuals who have been working diligently on curriculum these past few weeks. All in favor? Aye, okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. We have 6 aye and 1 abstention. Damon is the abstention.
And I would say I would look forward to the curriculum writers, particularly in the math, because I know that you've heard about some exciting things that were happening in math this past year. And I know that Ellen Reed, our humanities director, along with Kelly Weishar, will be looking to share information on what's happening in the humanities and culturally responsive curriculum that's being developed.
Great, thank you. 4C, athletics. A motion to approve the sheet that was submitted to us. Marty, second. Erica, any discussion?
Just some follow-up on the email that, that Judy sent about
About one of these?
I mean, I just think in general, the topic of fall athletics and hiring new people for a season that we don't know if it's going to take place, if you can just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's not a new hire. It's a hire that replaced a position that was already there, so it's not an additional hire.
So when we approved in 3 in July, one of them dropped off?
No, there was, I'm not sure how the sequence of that, but we didn't add a staff member. That was a staff member that was, they were looking to fill the position. Maybe they didn't have it filled at the time, but it wasn't an additional budgeted item. It was part of the staff that they had, the number of bodies, I should say. Did you want to?
Yeah, exactly. All the athletic coaches' positions are the ones that we've budgeted for. We haven't added anything new. Most of them were on a previous agenda. These were a couple of openings that we still had that weren't filled.
So I'm just being pragmatic, saying all my headcount where I work is frozen right now because we don't, there's a lot of uncertainty. I realize that if we hire people into these positions, I mean, during a normal time, this will be very appropriate, but given the fact that we don't know if we're going to have a season, I just, by hiring people into the positions, then
Well, we've already established a process to how that will be managed through what occurred in the spring, based upon the payment of services for a pause in season and how they'll be interacting with our student athletes. So I mean, it's budgeted, it's opportunities for our coaches if and when the governor does give the approval, September 21st, right? They'll be then given the opportunity to interact with our students, and so they would just be ready to do that.
would it, and I'm not trying to be difficult, I'm just saying, would it be more appropriate for us to wait until September 21st or closer to that time before we add people to?
Well, we're not adding, we're filling a position that we've budgeted for and that will be used to interact with students, whether there is a formal season or not.
Okay, so there,
How about we, can we pause this or put it to the side so we have a chance to discuss it?
The board could choose to do whatever it wishes to do.
Yeah, I think we can take this chance to discuss it. I tend to think, filling the position, because if you talk to athletes, they are interacting with their coaches. Despite everyone knowing that there may not be a season, doesn't mean that they're not striving to have some degree of interaction. To me, it seems better. But I'm comfortable with this format if you want to talk about it now, but I lean towards, we approve it, it fills that position, and they're able to interact with the students in one way or another, despite not knowing if they're going to have that season or if it will happen later in the year.
Some of the football seasons are being pushed to the spring, so there may still be a football season in the spring. We're not sure about that yet.
Well, the 3-season spring condensed version, that would be, again, it would be correct, part of this agreement.
I'm confused on how many coaches we will have. Will we
your
still have
microphone on,
three?
please?
I'm on.
Okay.
Will we still have three, or does this bring us to four?
They will have the same number that they had last year, and that was 4.
They had four
Right, and
last
and
year.
again, the way that they divide them up through their positions and specialty areas, there's anywhere from, 20 to, 15 to 20 per position area and specialty area.
So
I-
when we approved the coaches earlier in the year, we only approved 3 for football, is what you're telling us, instead of the 4.
No, we approved 1 varsity coach and 3 assistant varsity coaches, and then multiple JV coaches and modified coaches.
And were there those coaches named, or were we just approving, so they were, so
named.
we've got a person then who is, of the 4 that were approved, who is no longer going to fulfill that, and this person is going to be filling that position.
No.
So again, this was a position that was held by a particular coach. That coach is no longer coaching in that position, right? So that left a vacated spot that they interviewed, and it wasn't quite ready to be brought forward last month. And then this position was interviewed for and filled between last month and now. So nothing's changed
So
except that they found the
We did
person.
have an individual who has resigned, if you will, from their position, and this person is filling that position.
Yes,
Okay.
it's not an additional position.
Right, I don't remember. Do we approve resignations? I believe we do.
Well, it's not a resignation because it's a renewal of a contract.
Okay,
Right,
gotcha,
it's an
gotcha,
annual
okay.
appointment.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, they're year-to-year
But we
appointments.
appointed this person already, and they've chosen not to,
You didn't
No,
appoint
we
the
never.
person. You didn't appoint that person.
the person who was leaving.
Yes, the person who didn't come back didn't get appointed, so there was one
Gotcha.
position they were
just
looking
we
for.
approved them, but they never came back.
They never came back.
Gotcha. I
Okay,
understand.
and I think that's the clarification I was looking for, that I think came through the conversation, is that these coaches are having interaction with the kids right now, right? So we're putting somebody in a position that's responsible for a segment of the team, and I realize football teams are huge, so there's a lot of kids in positions. They're having interaction with the children as we speak, or currently, leading up to a potential season, whether that season be in the fall or the spring. There's still interaction that's happening.
Multiple times per week.
Okay.
I'm fortunate enough to see it close.
All right, okay.
I have a question about that, because I hear this from students all the time. In fact, there have not been tryouts or appointments to teams, so these are just possible students.
These are possible, if there's a coaching opportunity, right? But even still, they're still interacting with kids and they're, doing exercises and group chats. So, but you're right, the formal
Yeah, I
season.
just want to confirm for kids, because they're anxious and
Absolutely,
asking all the time
yes.
whether they've missed something.
They have not missed anything, and in fact, you cannot sign up yet for any of our interscholastic sports because we have to wait 30 days before the actual possible date, which is September 21st. So there has been no signups.
So are they working with past players as opposed, since
No,
there's
they're-
no
the-
real team yet?
There's no real team yet, but kids, they've sort of, they all sort of know who's been playing and they have each other's information. And they communicate.
So anyone new who hopes to be on the team is a part of this or not?
I don't know that level of detail. I would
Yeah,
imagine
actually, I could, if you don't mind me speaking to it really quickly. So my son did not play football last year. He's going into 10th grade this year. And he is getting the invites to the virtual workouts and everything. So somehow he was, picked up again and offered to be, part of these things moving forward. So the coaches are, they're reaching out and they're getting the information out and adding students to the workout lists and including everyone as much as possible.
Okay, let's go back. Judy, Damon, Joyce, Erica, Marty, questions satisfied, or would you like to table this to discuss later?
I would prefer to table it.
I'll second that, if that's.
Okay, so we are going to,
It's just a strange time, right? And
Correct.
I just think it does, I'm not saying we're gonna, that we're totally against this, but I do think it's worth processing athletics as a larger topic and just make sure we understand what's happening before we add people to something that appears to be pretty opaque at this point.
And this, I'm sure, won't be the first that we will address this.
Yep.
Okay, so I'd like to have a motion to table this discussion item so that we can discuss it more in length. So Joyce, you moved on that?
I seconded,
You
I
seconded.
guess, Judy.
Judy, I'm sorry, Judy first, Joyce second. All in favor of tabling this?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Peter, was that you included in that?
No, I'm opposed.
You're opposed. So 6 aye, 1 opposed. Okay, non-instructional civil service. I need a motion
We have
to.
to approve the others.
Which one? We're on D.
Under athletics, there's still another,
Oh, okay, got you. I thought we were going to just
Yeah, the motion was to approve.
to table the whole
Table
item.
everything.
To
Okay.
table everything,
Oh,
right. So we
okay.
can go back, yep.
That's fine.
Yep,
even the
So-
volunteer?
yep, I think we'll just, I think we just
Okay,
need to
yep, that's fine.
have a better discussion on that.
Yep.
Letter D, non-instructional and civil service. I need a motion to approve that item. Thank you, Marty. Second? Erica? Second, Erica. Any discussion on this item?
Okay, I assume that this is similar to the substitute teachers where we're purging the roles, I guess, or there seems to be an imbalance here as well.
So as far as the resignations again, yeah, so honestly, this is a little different than the other one. Some of the same with the substitutes, but you can see some of the other resignations are not substitutes. We've had a handful of people resign due to the uncertainty of the times and discomfort, excuse me, and not wanting to come back to school in the fall due to COVID or whatever. So that's what some of those other resignations are. And we're working on, filling the positions as we need them.
So are we, when we talked about, a couple of years ago, Brett, we talked about position analysis. Are we, I assume that we're going through that? I assume that a lot of these are critical positions as well.
We can make sure everybody's microphone is on. I can't hear the questions being asked.
Sorry, Peter, I apologize. I just was looking at, there's an imbalance between a lot of resignations here. Doug commented that was due to the uncertainty around COVID-19. And I was just wondering about, are we going to be refilling all these positions? Are we doing an analysis on, if we need to fill all the positions, or what's our strategy here?
So if you look at what we need more, our bodies, and we need people to support students. Lots of different scenarios out there that require that we have some sort of certificated staff to work with our educators in the classroom. Without a doubt, we definitely need these positions. With the number of students that we have and the way that we have to divide kids and provide us safe supervision, without a doubt.
So, given that we're starting in a couple of weeks, right? So, I mean, is there like a full court press on recruiting and?
Yeah, we have everything posted, and full court press is a good way to put it, but yeah, we're working away on trying to fill everything we need to fill, including reaching out to contacts, for example. Unfortunately, it sounds like the city school district, a lot of folks, again, took a hit there. They recently furloughed and/or let go a number of paraprofessionals, so I've reached out to some of my contacts there to let them know that we have positions. Dennis DeRozier and I are talking about trying to put a mini job fair together here in the near future too, to fill positions, and which would be a win-win to afford some of these folks that lost positions an opportunity to potentially come here. But yeah, I mean, it's really an ongoing process. It just seems that, right now there's a few more resignations than normal in this group. for whatever reason, and we are reviewing all the positions, as Superintendent Provenzano said. It does appear that we will need them because it's an all hands on deck with the way we're moving kids into different areas and spreading out and making sure that we're socially distanced. But it's an ongoing conversation too to really assess, the need of all the positions. So it's not just an automatic that we fill. We do look at it before we make the decision to, repost.
Doug, is there any way we can put a list on our website of the different positions that are available so that any of our residents who might be interested, I mean, there are a lot of cafeteria aide positions, school bus drivers, nurses aide positions that we could, so people can access, and here's what we have available currently?
I mean, they are all on the employment page, and we do tweet out, different positions too that are harder to find. So, we kind of come at it from a variety of angles. They are all on our website, though.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Any other discussion? Judy?
We have some new applicants that have been sent over to Peter, and he's working on, the process to hopefully hire.
Anybody else? Comments?
Well, we never completely filled every position that we needed before, so especially the bus drivers, that's just an ongoing process, and it's still a national crisis trying to find drivers. But same thing, talking to different districts that might be downsizing or letting drivers go. We're trying to, get them, no pun intended, steer them our way.
Anybody else? That sounded like a Damonism. There was definitely a Damonism. All in favor of approving this list? Aye. Pete, you're on there?
Aye, yes.
Okay, that's 7-0. Thank you. And letter 4E is benefit contracts for managerial administrative personnel. We have that in our packet. I'd like a motion. Joyce, second. Judy, any discussion on this? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
That's 7-0. And that takes us to our switched item on the agenda, which is number 6, the presentation of the district-wide safety plan. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to, want to turn it over to you first, and then?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you, Deborah Miles and Becky Short will be presenting the district-wide safety plan. I believe they're right behind me, and they have mics, and they're going to be talking about some of the substantive changes. Most notably, there's a piece on pandemic planning, and I know that they'll talk about some of the ways that they've cleaned it up. But remember, we're also a year off of a comprehensive audit, so we're proud to say that there's a lot of good pieces in here. But there was the pandemic that required us to do some legwork around that piece, and Mrs. Miles and Mrs. Short will develop that.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay. All right, so going through the district-wide safety plan, we did make some revisions, and I will briefly go over them. Some of them are very minor and just that there are staff changes or administrative name changes, and then other pieces are a little bit more in-depth, but you also received this, I think, and have had an opportunity to take a look at it. So in terms of adding an entire section, in terms of the table of contents, we added the pandemic piece on page 3 just to indicate that that exists later in the document. And then on page 7, we did some wordsmithing around the Safe Schools Helpline. That just needed a little cleanup. It was just the way it was organized when it was first entered. Needed just some wordsmithing and cleanup. So nothing changed the content or the plan with that. Our Safe Schools Helpline is still up and running. While it has only been used once or twice over the entire school closure, it has been used throughout the school year when we are open, so it's still a valuable asset to our district. Moving forward on page 10, again, just some additions of name changes with some administrative changes that occurred after retirements. And then the same on page 16. Just in terms of, for each of our school buildings, in the event of an emergency, our directors are assigned to a building, so we have some name changes there in terms of additions, or rearranging of administrators. On page 19, we have a flow chart of our communications in the event of an emergency, and did some rearranging on the left side of that based on some staffing changes, administrative changes. On page 20, when it speaks about our parent community notification in the event of an emergency, we have previously used our school messenger system. As everybody is becoming more familiar, we're shifting gears to our ParentsWare platform. So we have just identified that that is the format in which we would be notifying parents through voice, text, email, every way possible, just in the event of an emergency. On page 21 is where we added the recommended actions for a confirmed report of a pandemic or contagious disease in the area. So this is really just an outline of level 1, level 2, level 3. So it's reported in the county, but not in Fairport. It's reported in the county within the Fairport community, but not in our schools. And then it's reported in the county within a Fairport school. So how we would act in each of those cases. Again, it's an outline in terms of the actions that we would take as we have experienced over the past 3 to 4 or 5 months. There's a lot more detail to that work that happens, obviously, behind the scenes. So on page 22, that continues. Also name change down at the bottom regarding a administrative name change. And then Mrs. Short will pick up
Sure
a
thing.
couple.
Okay. Starting on page 23, New York State has changed some of the evacuation drills from when students are in school to a full 12-month list. So we put that in to comply with the New York State Department of Education and the New York State Fire Code. If we jump then to page 41. Oh, yep.
So regarding the drills, I mean, fire drill or state place drill, shelter in place drill, we're clustering kids together. So have you thought about how do we incorporate math?
Microphone, please.
Yep, there are recommendations from New York State on how to do that, and that's something that we're going to be processing as an administrative team to make sure that we're safely evacuating and sheltering in place. Yes. Absolutely.
Hey, can you turn on your microphone, please? Is that Damon or?
Peter, I
whoever-
just asked about the fire drills, stay in place, shelter in place drills, and the fact of integrating social distancing and masking during those processes. And Ms. Short said that they're taking that into consideration. They're doing professional development around how that's going to look, so that we're
Yeah.
prepared for it.
Yep, at the beginning of every year, we have a safety presentation for the entire staff, and that will be modified so that the staff is completely aware of the changes that we're going to have to observe and
Yep.
follow for this school year.
Okay, all right, great.
Move on to page 41. Those, again, are staffing changes and the phone numbers of the staff members. And then to page 53, recognizing Tim Sliz as a new board member for the district-wide safety committee and including him on that. And as I believe Brett and Deb may have mentioned before, we had done a pretty significant overhaul last year, so these are just some minor changes. And that's it.
So from this point forward, we will go to a public comment period, but we'll also assemble the district-wide safety team to review and modify or make changes to the document so the group can look at it. Mrs. Miles and Mrs. Short?
Correct. We will do that in the very near future, and then it will be posted, as you indicated, for 30 days, and then we will make any recommended changes and come back. as needed.
The quick reference guide will be posted. We will not be
Yeah,
able to post
exactly.
this document. That's why I was scurrying through it, because I don't want those
Yep.
pieces too out there in
Yep.
the great big wide web. So here's the timeline. If we need to expedite that for reporting purposes, I'll let the board know, but right now I'm anticipating an October workshop.
Any comments from any of the board members? We all good? Joyce, all set? Okay. Deb and Becky, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for your work on this as we are in uncharted territory, and who knows, because we still have to maintain all of our emergency drills and everything. So it's going to be interesting. Okay, that brings us to number 5A, which is building visits, and that was included in our packet. And we need a motion on this to approve these, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes.
Joyce, yep. Moved by Joyce, second. Anybody second? Judy? Discussion.
So, as we all know, there's nothing better that we do on the board, I think, than the building visits. They're awesome. But I also think about having 7 board members and a superintendent, 8 people clustered together walking around a building. You know, it just seems like, I mean, I'm not saying we shouldn't do building visits. I think we should, but I think we need to think about logistically how we accomplish that without being disruptive and, you know, keeping within guidelines ourselves, right?
Correct.
Keeping 6 feet between 7 board members, that's a long line of board members walking down the hallway.
It's a hallway.
Yep. So, you know, I just think we need to think about this, right? If we're all going to go to the same building at the same time, I mean, maybe we should split this up and stagger it. I don't really know, but I just think that keeping it the same as we've done in the past, right now anyway, may not be practical.
And again,
It may
that's-
not happen. I agree. I think you're right. The discussion still, overall, these are the dates. We're under requirements to visit, right, every building in our district at least once a year. But I don't know, and Joyce, you might be more familiar, does that mean we have to do it as a whole board, or can we assign and divvy this up somewhat to 1 or 2 people? But we have time to modify this, not necessarily the dates, I think, but modify our approach over the course of this year as things continue to unfold.
Yeah, I think I think we can just approve the dates, and then we can figure it out, and maybe after the first visit, it'll be clear to us what we've done wrong, or how it works, or how it might work better, or whatever, but we can approve the dates at this point. And I'm glad we got rid of the September,
Yes.
because that was way too soon to barge in on someone.
And I think that'll give us a good 3 or 4 weeks to understand how the schools are operating, so that we can adjust our plans as to how we're going to visit. End of October is, in my
Yeah, I
opinion,
think that's
a
fine, but
great
I do think that, you know, whatever the first date is, and I don't have it right here,
October 23rd. is the
October
first one.
21st, I think it's not practical for 7 board members to show up at the same building on October
Oh,
21st.
I'm in agreement with you, Damon.
Like, so,
And given that the first one is at Martha Brown, I'm sure Mr. Dunn, you know, might have some ideas of how a better way to do this than just all of us barging in and walking around rooms and disturbing pods and whatever. So,
There might be
And-
some virtual opportunities. Yep.
yeah.
And,
so we'll
Peter,
have to do it
we will have a
differently.
president's or leadership meeting with other districts at that time, and maybe this could be a topic we could discuss at that meeting, how other districts are planning to do this.
They don't do this. Other
Well,
districts don't do
let's
what we do.
just get an idea of what their plan is.
Yeah, most districts just
Right.
go into each building and look around. They don't, I've been asked many
Right.
times, how do
And-
we find time to do this?
I think, Peter, to your question, I think it was your question, or Damon, the law actually requires that we visit the building, but not while school is in session.
Right. We
And we
choose to
could
do
always
it this
decide
way.
to push off, that is me on blue, sorry, I have to get closer. We could always decide to push off and not start this until November. And divide up.
Yeah, we've got a little, yeah, we got some wiggle room.
And then do
Yeah.
Martha Brown and the high school and
Yep.
just split it between us.
Yeah, And again, maybe we each adopt a building this year. And that's, or two of us go to every, we, like you said, Damon, we divvy up. I think that's something we can discuss
Right.
offline.
Yeah.
But like you said, Joyce, let's just approve the dates for now, knowing that they could change depending on how things roll out in the next, the first 5 to 10 weeks of school.
Everything's subject to change.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just like the Genesee River, just constantly flowing. Totally fluid. All in favor of approving the dates that are shown to us with the ability that flexibility, or knowledge that flexibility is part of that? All in favor? Aye? Aye? That's 7-0. Thank you, Peter. Next on the agenda, the masking policy. It says here discussion only, but I believe on Friday you did come to some conclusion. I was not at that meeting. So I'd like to have a motion first to accept the mask policy. Judy, second. Marty, discussion.
Yeah, number one is, a lot of work went into this, and I appreciate it, and I think we had a lot of discussion. That's very good. My question would be, Brett, as you're talking to other superintendents, is this masking policy consistent with what you're seeing in other districts around us, or are there outliers?
I think each district is looking for a masking policy, and each district has levels of how it will be applied. The 6 feet in distancing with barriers, I think that's pretty consistent, but to the extent that it's more strict, I think that's relative to each district. It's not less strict, but the more comprehensive approach initially is unique to each district's interests.
It does need a number. That's the one thing it's missing. And
That needs a policy number.
have to have Taylor figure out where it belongs in our
Okay.
list. It needs a policy number.
Joyce, I can't hear you.
Yeah, Joyce, what was that?
It needs a policy number.
Needs a policy number, gotcha.
Any other discussion? Peter, anything you'd like to add to the discussion?
No, we had this discussion only, right? But you had a motion made. We do not need to vote on this, as I understand it. I think the policy committee, which had quorum, took
Correct.
care of the second reading.
Right, we put discussion in before that meeting was held. That's why we have discussion on the agenda. We should have removed
Right,
that.
but I guess the motion is, I'm not sure was needed, because we're
That's
not
true.
going to be
Thank you.
voting on
You're right.
anything,
You're
right?
This-
You don't need to vote.
Right, because that was already approved by the.
Right.
Thank you.
Just procedural comment, in
you.
other words. Yeah.
Anybody else have any thoughts?
No,
they'd
I
have
just
on this?
will say that it's all based on science. We listen to our doctors. Doctors Cook and Leonard have been helpful with this and reading all the articles, listening to all the interviews of the TV doctors and all of that, and reading CDC and state ed. And we just,
Even more recently, right, Joyce, in terms of the gators themselves,
Yes.
the more recent studies showing that those are not nearly as effective and perhaps worse. And,
yes,
you know.
that was really interesting that there could be worse than
And-
nothing.
And that's
Well, as
actually-
I'm flying on an airplane with everybody practically wearing a gator, thinking, okay, this seems futile now, right? Making ourselves more susceptible than less.
And this will be made available to the community.
It's been shared with the staff. I'll be making it available to the greater community in my weekly update.
Great, thank you. Okay, moving on to letter C under 5, revised 2021 calendar. And Brett, you were going to discuss that and explain some of your reasoning behind the few minor changes.
Yeah, and again, I think.
Make a motion.
Oh, thank you. Motion to approve the
So moved.
amended calendar. Joyce, second. Erica, discussion. Thank you.
We front-loaded our superintendent conference days, September 2nd and 3rd, 8th and 9th, 4 days. Appreciate the coordination and collaboration with the Teachers Association, realizing that collaboration and coordination is going to be incredibly important as we talk about all the logistics of our return to school. So we'll be using those days in a very thoughtful way to engage our staff members so they're well versed, feeling as comfortable as they can, as Damon mentioned, in this very unusual environment and getting acclimated to the surroundings and the processes. We've also kept the Superintendent's Conference Day in October. That might be a day where we're needing to breathe and sort of say, how are we doing? And what do we need to consider to fine tune and reflect upon? You'll notice that in December, there is a Superintendent's Conference Day right here. That's another day where we can achieve contractual obligations for staff attendance, but also make it a meaningful day so we can, again, take a breath and ask, how are we doing? What do we need to monitor and adjust? How are things going? And then emergency closing days, AKA snow days, will be now virtual days. We'll be able to plan accordingly and get the credit, as in the past where we were not able to use any type of school credit or hours for that. So that's how we are planning on maximizing our calendars. I believe we have, one emergency closure day in here if we needed to use that. And we also have another day that we could take back in May if necessary on a long weekend. So we built in some opportunities just in case there are closures where we're not able to attend virtually as well.
I think it's important to note, too, that as the year goes on and should we need to close down again like we did back in March, that we'd go to an all virtual and we would still follow this same calendar.
We would be following the same calendar if
With-
we go, but if the
even if we
governor
went-
comes in
right.
with more decrees, that changes the game, as it did this past year
Right.
with February breaks and
Right,
April
right.
breaks. Yeah.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
That's 7-0. Next on the agenda is textbook approval. I need a motion to approve the textbooks that were submitted to us. There's, I'll get a motion first. Marty, second. Judy? Discussion? Anybody like to discuss any of these or question any of these? I'd like to just read them. One is called Refugee. It's from Johanna Parent English, 7. Another one is World History, My Interactive Early Ages. That's middle school, both Martha Brown and Johanna Parent for grade 6. Damon?
It was one of the emails that was sent around cultural competency and descriptions of the books that were being adopted at the different grade levels, and they look awesome, really.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm tempted to go get them myself, right, and really read them. But I think that's excellent. And, I hope it's successful.
Well, we talk about how do we diversify our curriculum, how do we
Yeah.
make it culture responsive, and again, those are accountability pieces to that. But I think it's something that's being embraced by the staff as well, which is even more special.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. It's
Aye.
7-0. Next on the agenda is the Monroe County Sheriff's Office Joint Fueling Agreement, and I believe this is an annual event that we constantly are coordinating with various entities for our fueling station. It's one of those shared services where municipalities and school districts all try to maximize our efficiencies. I need a motion. Marty, second? Judy? I can't see Erica, that's why I can't see her. Any discussion?
Just my only question for Matt would be, is this the reason that we keep the gates open to the transportation center? Because I never see those gates closed at all.
The gates are behind the fueling station,
Oh, okay, it's been moved.
so the fueling
right.
station has no gates at all.
Okay, all right,
So
okay.
I've questioned the gates many times myself.
Okay, all right. Okay, sorry. Thanks for answering.
Any other discussion?
Great job, Matt. Thanks.
Oh, I didn't know Matt was here, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't
He's
know. I was looking
Yeah,
around.
he's
I
the loud guy in the
I
back row.
apologize.
Can't you see him back there smiling?
I did not see Matt. Matt? You want to- Okay. Thank you. Sorry about that, Damon. Sorry about that, Matt. All in favor? Aye. Okay,
Aye.
that's 7-0. Next on the agenda, Article 7, Tax Settlement, Interwest Holding I LLC, aka Parenton Hills Residential LLC. I need a motion, please. Marty, second. Judy? Discussion. Matt?
Yep, thank you.
Sorry.
This is in Article 7. Can everyone hear me okay? Good.
Yes.
This is an Article 7 settlement for Interwest Holdings, Parrington Hills, across from Wegmans and Fairport. And you'll notice within the order that it is a refund for 17-18 and 2018-19 tax year. So the assessment was significantly lower in 17-18, up a little in 18-19, and no refunds for 19-20.
And Matt, I believe that's because their property was rezoned and redeveloped. So while it was under construction, the value was less. Is that what I'm guessing?
Correct. Yep.
Are you talking about all the new townhomes?
Yep.
and-
Yes.
Okay. Is that ultimately adding revenue to the district?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yep. It helps the tax base as a whole.
Yep, okay.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. 7-0. Next on the agenda, transportation contract. Letter G, National Express, doing business as Monroe School Transportation, private and parochial. Motion, please? Joyce, Marty. Discussion. Oh, seeing no discussion or hearing no discussion?
We, just, the quick discussion is, I mean, I know we're subcontracting out these runs to a third party. Is there a reason that we couldn't do this with our own people? Or we just don't have enough people or enough
Correct.
buses or?
Yep, not enough drivers.
Okay. And they're driving our buses though?
They're driving their buses.
Their buses?
They have their own fleet, correct.
Okay.
This particular contract is the same private and parochial runs that we did last year. So similar concept, might not be the exact same route, but it's same category.
Yeah. Is it, this one is 685,000.
Projected, this dollar amount is currently anticipated to be a little bit lower than we spent last year, but that doesn't mean because of the runs. I mean, it all depends on the runs and costs throughout the year. So we're really billed on a per trip cost. So that's really where the cost comes into play.
If our schools were to shut down in our district, would we then be able to use our drivers to do these runs, or do we have to keep this contract?
If you remember, during 2019-20, we actually did not pay Monroe during.
Well, everyone shut down then. I'm talking about if we had an outbreak in Fairport schools. This is for outside of Fairport, right?
Yep.
So those schools might still be up and running.
Yeah, we would look at it and approach it to be the most effective and efficient as we could at the time. Yeah, depending on what happens or what the scenario may be.
Okay.
But it's a per trip cost, right?
This is a per trip cost, correct?
Any other comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
7-0. Next is transportation contract, National Express, doing business as Monroe School Transportation small bus contract. Need a motion, please? Marty, second. Judy? It's the Marty-Judy show tonight. Any discussion on this one? This contract is for $194,400. Matt, again, is this also the per run?
Yep, yes, it is.
Okay.
Yep, based on a per bus, per diem, per mile. You can see right in the contract.
Any other discussion items? Anything? All in favor? Aye. That's 7-0. Next is extra classroom fund. I need a motion to make that amendment. Marty, second. Oh, Damon. Ooh, switch it up a little bit. Any discussion about this one? This is just simply changing individuals to be able to sign. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That's 7-0. Next one, budget transfers. I need a motion to accept this budget transfer. Judy, second. Erica. Discussion.
Yep, so,
Mr. Stevens.
yeah, I can jump in and explain. The two budget transfers you see, one is to cover the expense related to the refund for the tax settlement previously approved. At year end, as mentioned in the memo, at year end, the district can decide whether or not it wants to utilize the actual cash out of the tax certiorari reserve during the year end closing review. And the other piece is $500,000 going from the building repair contracts into custodial supplies for materials. These are expenses related to our COVID costs for the supplies and piece we've been purchasing. If you remember, we made a decision in terms of not pursuing some repairs. This is the large projects that we've talked about that typically have been done at year end in the past, but we budgeted money. The board, as we worked with the finance committee, we were able to budget funds within the repair contracts for buildings and grounds, which is extremely helpful. However, conscious decision to utilize that money to help with some of the COVID costs.
$500,000 is a lot of money. Understand that has to be done, but what is not being done because we're moving this money?
That would be just any of the district-wide repairs that we work with buildings on that come up in a year.
So if
could
there's-
be
that's-
ceiling put off for a year, could be some of those different pieces.
Could be pavement put off for a year.
Okay.
Again, this was all part of the strategy.
So it's not critical.
Well, anything that's
repairs.
health and safety, we would represent it as
Yep.
such.
Right, okay,
Yeah, if there were health and safety related items, we would be addressing those.
okay.
Um,
So we also got the note, maybe a different topic, but you're the right guy. We got the email that you forwarded today about the July and August, or June and July reimbursements being pared down to 80%. Is maybe you could talk about that a little bit and talk about the impact that we're gonna feel because of that, if
Sure.
any?
Yep. So referring to the 1920 year-end excess cost payments, again, if you remember, I've talked about this in previous years, the actual revenue cash for prior year state aid, some of that still flows after closing of the previous year, so we have accruals in place. So our excess cost payment that came in, I believe it came in today, but we were notified just a couple days ago about it being withheld back by 20%. So in this particular case, we're working with our auditors to adjust accruals for 1920, so it doesn't impact 2021 cash flow or aid for this year. However, as much as we know right now today, it appears that Division of Budget is holding back 20% of aid payments going forward. We won't, fully know that until aid keeps coming in. So that's
As
as much as we
advertised.
know today.
I mean, this is what we were anticipating through the budget process last year. We were hoping that it would be not as deep, but this is the number that we prepared for, and in as much as we can try to control, we're in a good spot in as much as we can be, given the fiscal moves that were done at the end of last year with some reserve analysis.
Thanks, Brett.
Matt, because this money was transferred for COVID expenses, are we getting any federal aid for COVID expenses? I know there's been talk out there of some of this relief aid.
The only thing we have seen so far would be the CARES Act money. However, we did budget that revenue to come on in. So, still waiting on any other federal dollars, which is also part of the reason for the holdback in the state aid payments.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all in favor of those budget transfers?
Aye.
That's 7-0. Thank you. Next is the universal pre-K agreement. I need a motion to accept what was presented to us. Marty, second. Erica, thank you. Discussion on this?
Is this for the same number of children, Brett, that we always do?
Yeah, this is for the same number.
Same, and do you know how that's going to differ? Are they going every day? Are they doing alternate days or anything?
I think the
to-
childcare is still, they have a different set of parameters. So, them doing a hybrid model, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, they're still supposed to distance and all of that, so I'm just
Yeah.
wondering if,
Yeah, I don't have a definitive, but that's a good question I could follow up with. That's good to know, actually. But again, I would make the assumption that they're still going full because of their childcare status.
Yep, and one of the pieces from my understanding in conversations and talking about the budget piece with them is they may, they're working closely with the state. They may be able to still run the program at 30, just depending on the spacing pieces that they need to work through.
And I just want to clarify for myself, when I first saw this, I saw the dates were different, but this is a 4-year agreement that we approve every year. It was assigned, it was first entered
This-
into last year, so this is the second year, correct? Or is
Yeah, this is the first renewal of 4. So
Right,
initially, if we remember back 6 years ago, the initial contract was in place with 4 renewals as well, so up to 5 years. And then just last year was the first year that expired, so we put a new agreement in place for 1920, and this will be the first renewal
Great.
of that. Typically, there may be slight dollar changes, but in talk with Generations, they, at this point, look to keep it flat.
Great, super, thank you. All in favor?
I,
Aye?
I,
Okay, it passes. Right, that passes 6 with 1 abstention. Thank you. And next on the agenda is the agreement for professional consultant services with the University of Rochester Medical Faculty Group. I need a motion to go forward with this, please. Judy, a second? Joyce? Discussion?
is the microphone on?
Microphone on, Judy, please.
I was asking about the social skills group that they're providing support for.
Yeah, so the peers group is a social skills group and designed really for autistic children, but also for some more on the higher end, though, of functioning. And it's certainly applicable to students with ADHD that may have some executive functioning delays as well. And so this past year, we introduced it to our middle schools, and U of R acts as a trainer and facilitator initially, and then our people take over after that and run it in the future. So I think we got all the way through the training at Martha Brown. They felt comfortable at that point finishing it. And then JP, we had intended to use it with our Better Together program this summer, in summer program, but because we were not physical, it was not appropriate to try to roll it out in this scenario. So we will be moving forward with Joanna Perrin, and then hopefully next summer we will be in person and be able to bring it to our Better Together program as well.
I missed the last bit. One of my questions was whether we were doing it at the elementary.
No, it is totally intended for middle level to high school level.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
I,
7-0. Thank you. And the last item on the board discussion is the district goals, and that's no action required. And that's Brett.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about taking a look at some of the things that have changed in our world and relative to instructional technology. There was a piece that Mr. Buffum threw together, and I, smithed it a little bit. And then we've been talking about access and equity and adding levels of accountability and specificity to this particular district goal. So I just offer it up for, discussion and, for the board to consider as we move towards the start of the school year. I gave examples. There's examples inside the administrative content of board docs. Damon, did you want to speak to the one that you were?
We talked about this during a meeting last week, and I think that, given the environment that we're in, and given the the long-lasting impact of what we're doing. I think that one of our goals as a district needs to be to continually evolve in terms of our abilities with our digital framework. Distance learning capabilities is going to be a big part of what we do, and I think that's really an evolution, or it's a continual, I don't know how to put it without sounding trite, but it's a journey, right? It's not a one-time event. It's something that we're continually need to focus on, understanding the tools that are out there, and then making sure that we're developing competency and development around being able to use those in a fluid kind of way. So our teachers can not have to think about the technology, really focus on teaching, but be able to use technology to extend that teaching both within the classroom and to those remote. And I think that's something that, it's easy to say, but it really takes a purposeful focus to be able to accomplish. And it's something that I think is worthy to be one of our district goals. I think that's something we have to prioritize and make sure that we're focused on. So, when we put this together, and Brett, I like the way you wordsmith it. It's really, it's identify, adopt, and then make sure it's scalable to hundreds of students at a time, and ensuring that we have professional development around the tools that we adopt. And then, as technology and software and applications go, whatever we adopt this year will become obsolete next year potentially. There may be something better out there, so we have to have a process where we're engaging staff, administration, and students to make sure we're evaluating new tools and identifying new things that we want to adopt, beta testing those, by all the constituents before we throw them out into production, and make sure that we've got buy-in from the different stakeholders. That's something that really happens around technology adoption within companies, and I think that it's now becoming so pervasive in what we do, we need to adopt something similar to that.
Damon, I'm glad that you keep referring to these as tools.
Yeah.
Because that's what they are. I mean, this pen is a tool.
Yeah.
And chalk and my chalkboard were a tool that I use to educate children.
Yep.
These are just different ways that we can help educate children due to the circumstances that we're in. And also, once we're out of these circumstances, we can continue to use these tools to just
Right.
enhance education.
Absolutely, it's teachers. It's teachers that are the valuable content that we have, and these tools allow us to extend that teaching influence to people in different locations. And we have to think about things that scale, right? It's not one-to-one anymore. It's one-to-many, and it's congruent. I mean, we'll have literally, once we have this up and running, we have virtual students. I mean, we'll have hundreds and hundreds of virtual sessions happening at the same time coming out of our buildings, right? So that
Hopefully.
yeah, right. Well, that's the goal, right? I mean,
With the
so
right
we have to
tools.
have things that scale, and it's easy. I mean, and I know that Brett, there's a lot of context behind our board meetings and trying to integrate Facebook Live and YouTube Live and everything else, but we can't take 22 minutes every class period for a teacher to be able to figure out the technology, right? It's just got to be something that works. And we don't really, ultimately, we don't want our teachers to have to think about the technology. We don't want them to go into a classroom and teach. And if there's kids in the classroom, that's great. If there's kids virtual, remote, that's great. The teacher shouldn't have to think about the technology. They should just be able to go in and teach and, hit a couple of buttons or whatever and click a couple of things, open it up, and that's it. So we need to get good at that. It's going to take some practice, but it's going to take a district goal, I think, to focus on it.
And many of our children, our own children, are going back to college or to other places, and it's done virtually, right? And this online environment is a real thing that our students need to become comfortable and acclimated with, and putting it in a district goal and having the resources to support that district goal. And I was, putting the multi-year endeavor, right? I mean, this is not a one-time thing. I know we like to have our goals, we can refine them, develop them as they go along, but, this takes, several years to get to a place where there's high levels of fluency, and making sure your infrastructure can support the level of technology, and even our devices. I know as a board, there needs to be a conversation about one-to-one devices, and I'm looking forward to learning along with the board as we move through, if the board does choose to create a district goal.
You go back in history, 120 years ago, when these new machines were starting to be seen called horseless carriages. And, you had those stalwarts that never got rid of their horse and buggy because, that's a fad, that's a fad, that's a fad. And I don't know of how many people today would rather go back to horse and buggy instead of their automobile.
Well, I think what you'll see in
It's
this
how
environment.
technology evolves
Yeah.
and how we need to,
Well, and because-
it doesn't happen overnight,
Right.
but in
Right.
this case, it needs to
Right.
happen sooner than that.
It's like anything in the technology world, and I think what you'll see right now, because it's not just Fairport, it's every district in the world, literally, is working on this remote learning. You'll see amazing things being developed now to solve the problems that we have, to basically extend the teacher in the classroom, not replace it, but extend that teacher and allow them to do different things in a very creative way, and I think that that'll happen rapidly, right? So what we're picking today to be the platforms that we're rolling out and using consistently, and it can't be different by every teacher, right? Because we have to be able to have consistency, collaboration, and then we have to have a way of evaluating its effectiveness. But I think what you'll see is the things that we adopt today, 6 months from now or a year from now, there will be something much better, right? And if we're not looking, constantly evaluating, we'll miss those things, and then before you know it, we'll be using solutions that are really antiquated compared to what's out there today to be able to facilitate learning. So having this process where you have people constantly engaged in technology evaluation, I think is important. And I'm not saying it should take, people's 100% of their time, but I think that, just a group of people that's part of what they do. And we do have technology coaches now that we've established in the district, and I think that, we'll talk about the logistics around it, but I think that we do have a structure right now of people that can really take this on, and that'll be good.
Joyce, Marty, anything you'd like to add to the conversation?
Just in terms of the diversity, if we want to switch over to that part, if we're done with technology, I would say some of us had the opportunity to attend the staff development days this summer on diversity, and there is a lot of positive energy around this, so we look forward to working on this area maybe at our next workshop and bringing forward some of the ideas that we learned there, and also from our parent group that contributes to that topic as well. So a lot of work to be done, but a lot of fertile ground to do it in, I guess.
I like that because we're all missing our Ithaca symposium this year.
Right.
So, we
So-
all got that in our
Yeah.
guts that we want to.
But Marty, I
Continue.
do want to tie these two goals together, right? And I think that, Brett, you did that earlier tonight when we talked. Equity, access, and diversity, and technology, and the technology that we adopt, they can, the technology can facilitate equity, access, and diversity. We have to make sure that as we adopt technology and solutions and software and everything else, that we're keeping those equity, access, and diversity in mind, right? And making sure that we're providing that equity and access. But you can actually use tools that enhance that and facilitate that, right? And offer more learning opportunities. And, I just think about teaching different topics. Teaching music, for example, using technology. There's solutions to this problem that we have, and technology is part of it, right? So, if you watch any late night TV, now that we didn't have to wake up at 5:30 in the morning, right? You watched like Jimmy Kimmel or whatever. There was amazing musical performances with people in different parts of the world, right? All collaborating together to compose songs, to write songs, and to perform together. And there's, plays that can be accomplished. So if we adopt the right technology, we can provide
Judy,
It's
Erica,
you.
anything you'd like to add?
Lost all sound.
Oops.
No sound at all, Peter?
I hear you. Maybe battery died over there or something. I don't know. It just
No.
ended.
Let's see if you can hear Judy now.
Yes. See if you can hear me, Peter.
Yeah, I can hear
Yeah?
Judy.
Okay. I think it's funny because I think that we all come at the goals differently. I like data, and so I love Damon's vision of how technology can help, but I like that things are trackable and that we count them, that we see how kids are doing, and who's being included and how we're moving kids along and disciplinary and getting into different courses, that there is data collection and that we keep an eye on this. And as a stats person, that helps me kind of understand how we're doing. So I like that lens.
Erica?
I know we talked about tools and just that there might be some translation that can be provided for families that speak English as a second language. I also keep bringing up closed captioning. When technology, maybe the auditory part isn't working, having closed captioning is a good fallback. And I know we keep talking about this, but just including diversity and everything we were talking about with recruiting and hiring people too. So looking across our systems, not just what we're doing in classrooms. So all important. And it is interesting how differently we all look at it.
Mm-hmm. Peter, any thoughts?
I like the discussion. I think, perhaps a thought, right? A thought under the access equity with data is some degree of, I know we've been doing it, but I think it's consistent. Are we tracking the right things as well? Do we have the information in the data that we have? Perhaps that's part of our goal, is to ensure that we are getting the data needed or tracking the right things.
And I always like to look at things with the affect of, how are we working with affect with all of our students, with all of our adults, when it comes to equity and access. You look at the data and you look at the technology, but how are you feeling? And that's a very important part, because education, our business is people. And we have all these wonderful tools that we're starting to really engage and use. And we're looking at different ways that people are getting involved, but it's the how are we all feeling about this? That's what a lot of people have a hard time understanding is education is people, and business and industry is a little different. Finance is a little different. Government is a little different, but our product, if you will, and I hate to use that word, but our goal is to educate people and give them skills and give them knowledge and give them the ability to try new things and take those risks in life as you're in a nice, secured environment, so that when you become an adult, when our 25-year-olds are out there in the world, our 30-year-olds are out there in the world, they can look back and say, you know what, Fairport really, really provided me with a great foundation.
Well, we did hear from some students and past students this summer,
Yep.
well, both at the leadership and at some of the gatherings that happened in the village.
Right.
And not all of those students felt all that good.
Yep, right.
They were made to feel uncomfortable and to be lesser and they had some difficulties. And so it's great when those things come out into the open so that they can be addressed. And some of them did speak to the fact that someone took care of it and they knew who to go to, and there was, a remedy for some, but some were just left feeling, why did we have to do that assignment? So we're learning as we go along, but I've thought that the leadership this summer was really well done. There was a lot of excitement, as Marty said. There was a lot of information, a lot of data. And so I think we're on a good track, and it's just going to be more challenging to do it under these circumstances, because we can't say, oh, let's get that group together and we'll all sit around a circle like we did last year.
But you look at the 7 of us, we love a challenge. Come on, bring it on.
I know. We've all had enough challenges,
We've had plenty of challenges. Anybody else comments? Okay, thank you. That brings us to our board comments. Anybody else like to make any other board comments that we have not discussed already tonight? Peter, anything from you?
Nothing from me, thanks.
Damon? Judy?
Well, this is actually a little bit contradictory, but I was thinking about it earlier. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I'm very aware that this has been challenging for lots of our students, this whole circumstance. And so we're all kind of keeping an eye on levels of anxiety and sadness as kids kind of make their way through this. before I studied clinical, I studied social psychology. And in social psychology, there's all kinds of research on the resilience of populations who go through challenging times. And one bit of research that I always really loved was, it's called the near miss phenomena. And they found it in London after the bombings. And what they realized is they anticipated all kinds of escalated anxiety and depression in people. But what they found was that actually people experienced lots of euthymia, positive mood. And so when people make their way through difficult times, they're actually pretty darn excited. And I see that all the time as people are re-entering life. And I anticipate that with our students. They are going to be so excited to be here that that will be part of the experience as well. And I just want people to remember that, because I think we're all pretty focused on the anxiety, and we have to make room for some excitement as well. That was all.
And I think they'll be excited to come back to a whole new environment. Some kids will love the fact that there'll be 10 kids in their class, and there's more one-on-one. I mean, there's just a lot of positives that can come out of this. Great. Erica, anything? All set? Okay, that brings us...
Well, just
Oh,
one
I'm
second.
sorry, Marty, I forgot.
I just want to
All
say
set.
this probably is our last business meeting before the start of school, so usually a time where we're saying Happy New Year. So just adding to what Judy said, just so many thanks to people, especially Brett and his team for the resilience all summer, working probably 25 hours a day in each day. It seems like the emails are endless, and I'm sure the meetings are even more so. So just a big thank you to all of our administrative staff, our teachers, and our staff across the buildings for all the energy that they've put into this school opening. It will be a different one for sure, but we're all in it together and hoping that it will be a wonderful one.
Yeah, I'll second that. I think I'll agree with that wholeheartedly, and I think it's a summer none of us are ever going to forget because of all the things we've had to do. But I think it's so impressive how much has gotten done, and listening to all of those meetings that Brett has held, and everyone from PTA, everybody has done an extraordinary job, I think. The questions were amazing, the answers were there, and when they weren't, they were honest and said, we're still working on that piece. We're getting to it because there's so much to be done. But I think it's astounding how much has been done. And all of this, and no one's going to love any of it because we're in such an extraordinary circumstance here. But I'm so grateful for all the work that's been done.
And
Joyce, I mean, just while we're chatting, I mean, I think that there's going to be people that are really unhappy because there's some, I mean, I hate to even open up Pandora's box, but there's some people that believe that this is just not real, right? And so I think you mentioned something earlier tonight, and that is that we are working with medical experts and CDC guidelines, and we're following guidelines. And I think the statistics are apparent. I don't want to get philosophical about it, but I think that there's people that are all over the spectrum of whether they're going to be happy or unhappy. But I think the fact is, the bottom line is that as a board and as a district, and Brett, you've had awesome leadership, we're following the medical guidance and the science. And it's not based on emotion, it's based on metrics and data and medicine, right? So that's what we're grounded in. And I think that as we move forward, and things will change over time and we'll modify things, but it'll be based on medical metrics and science metrics and the advice and guidance we're getting from medical people, and not based on emotion.
That's the first fundamental of the 5 fundamentals. Sorry.
and Peter, your opening remarks. If people, those of us who are watching, if you can go back to listen to Peter's opening remarks, you hit it on the head. This has been certainly unnerving for some people. Certainly not a big deal. Other people, beyond concern. And then Brett, the team has to change on a dime every other week, it seems. And it's it's amazing how when the majority of people put their minds to it, things can get accomplished.
And we appreciate the Board of Education's support and high interest in making sure that we're doing all we can and asking all the right questions to keep our priorities in line with what we are wholeheartedly believing in as a school community. So thank you.
Hey, if I can say one more thing, I have I'm standing on my soapbox here.
And you've got your microphone,
Right.
so you're good.
I have the microphone on. So it's, the old, the adage, it's easy to open schools, it's much harder to keep them open. And this is public education. It's not private education. It's not one-on-one education. It's easy to open our doors. It's up to the community to keep the doors open, right? And really what happens outside of our school environment, all we can do here is teach the kids and use the technology the best we can. But when the children go home and, the activities that they're a part of and where they travel and, if they're wearing masks, I'm not prescribing anything, but I'm just saying we're all in this together, right? And, it's going to be difficult, but it's up to the community to come together and really work together to make sure that we can keep the doors open. That's not a school thing. That's a Fairport thing, a Monroe County thing, a Finger Lakes thing.
Closing school was, in March was challenging and heart-wrenching, but opening school and keeping school open is such a bigger challenge.
Anybody else? Okay, next time we convene, we will be in the beginning of a new school year. I need a motion to go into executive session to discuss some personnel items. Damon, second. Judy, all in favor? Aye. We thank you all for joining us tonight. When we reconvene from executive session, we will not be moving on anything. We will simply be adjourning our meeting. So we will be ending our live broadcast as of this time. Thank you for joining us, those of you who joined us remotely. Good night.
Good night, thanks.